DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines, proudly brings you Equal Justice. Find out the hottest legal issues of the week and hear the analysis. And now, here are your hosts, Attorney Ador Tolentino.
Yes to peace, no to BBL.
Facebook yan.
Facebook. Okay, if you want to follow.
Attorney June Kicho.
Kailangan comfort level eh.
Exactly.
And Attorney Tiki Tabuhara.
Vice President Binay, pati si Pinoy, pati si Executive Secretary. Chief. Of course, the chairman of the Commission on Human Rights, Chito Gascon. If you want to join us in our discussion, here are our telephone numbers. 895-4460. So that's 895-4460 or 897-8374. So with those two numbers, you can join in and ask our chairman of the Commission on Human Rights. We're now discussing the issue of the Kidapawan dispersal of the rally last April 1, 2016. So I guess there was a question just before we took the break.
The question that
the big question
Ador asked was, since there are different investigations ongoing, how do we ensure that they don't contradict with each other? The quick answer to that is there is no assurance that they won't contradict. But then again, we're looking at the same set of facts. That's why I said we welcome all other investigators. But for purposes of the Commission on Human Rights, to preserve the integrity of our own process, we do not, in a sense, coordinate findings. What we do is, of course, we need to get all the facts. So we will interview the law enforcement, we will interview the local government, we will interview the protesters, and make our own report. So it is certainly within the realm of what's possible that the findings of the police may not be in all instances the same as our findings. In a sense, it's a way of looking at one incident but from different points of view and perspectives. But all of us, of course, what we need to do is devoid it of opinion and speculation and focus on facts.
Chito, your findings, I think, will figure more in the in establishing the human rights record of this country in the global community. Am I right?
Well, the investigations and reports that the Commission on Human Rights undertakes is one source of evidence used by the international community when it assesses the human rights record of a particular country. But it's not the only source. There are other sources. So independent sources aside from the Commissions on Human Rights are NGOs, human rights NGOs, news reports, other states. By the way, for example, the United States, every March of every year, they come out with what's called the State Department Human Rights Report. And that's essentially undertaken by their own human rights officers across the world. They come out with a report. It's available online. So, and then you mentioned, Kiki, the UN. So what happens is there are multiple sources, but certainly the work of the Commission on Human Rights is a regular source of information for discussing or having what they refer to as a dialogue, constructive dialogue with the countries involved when their country is up for what's called universal periodic review. You know, this is a mechanism that is in place under the UN system. We had our last universal periodic review.
It's like an audit, no? Audit.
That's right, on human rights. Because in the past, under the framework of what's called the Human Rights Commission previously, or Commission on Human Rights in the UN system, what happened was only the most egregious countries were always brought, and never the big countries. You know, because they were powerful. So to reform the way the UN worked and to make sure that it was fair, universal, every single UN member goes through a period of audit on its human rights called Universal Periodic Review.
And then may grade yan, no? There's a grade.
Yeah, it's essentially a dialogue of peers. So let's say the Philippines is up. The last time we were up was in 2012.
Okay, and just to inform our listeners and myself included, what is our grade
Yeah.
in that audit?
Well, so we were up. There were a series of questions. It went on for several hours actually, and the ones who were asking were the other members of the now what's called the Human Rights Council.
In the UN Commission on High Commissioner on
The UN High Commissioner on Human Rights is with the rank of Deputy Secretary General. Is a resource person to the Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council is sort of like an assembly of all the states of the UN that are part of the Human Rights Council. It's a body of the UN, like the UN General Assembly
UN Security Council
or like the UN Security Council. This one's called the Human Rights
And
Council.
the membership of this Human Rights Council
About
changes every time?
2 years. They elect new members. In 2012, for example, when the Philippines went for universal periodic review, we were not a member of the Human Rights Council. But last year, the Philippines was elected into the Human Rights Council, so which is probably an acknowledgement that there's been improvement in our human rights record.
Well, just to answer the question, what is the grade of the Philippines?
What
On human
happened?
rights?
It's not a grading system from 1 to 10. Instead, at the end of the period, there's a set of recommendations, and then we are assessed the next round how far we've gone in implementing those sets of recommendations. So I was part of the Universal Periodic Review in 2012 as part of the government delegation.
You were not yet Commissioner on Human
No,
Rights.
I was not. I was at that time Undersecretary for Political Affairs, but part of my portfolio was to look at the human rights performance of our government. And we prepared well for it. They had asked us very hard questions about the problem of impunity, and in particular dealing with
Killing of journalists.
what's called extrajudicial killings. And so we're supposed to
Sa
make
Davao, ganun.
yeah, anywhere. We're supposed to make improvements in the area of impunity, and coming out of that.
So that was a hot issue. That was one of the
At
hot,
that
the hot,
time, and I
things.
anticipate it will continue to be a hot issue.
Now,
Pero,
My question is, what happens if we say they're not satisfied with the progress we're making in
normally, they will then make the UN bodies will then encourage or urge the state to make reforms and to work with the UN. So normally they'll assign experts. There'll be more dialogue. There might even be the development of programs to see improvement. For example, in the case of these extrajudicial killings was regular fare during the Arroyo period, which prompted, in fact, the UN to send the UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial killing, Mr. Philip Alston. I don't know
No,
if you
but
remember.
let's be honest, even until now, it's still going on.
That's right. But what I was going to say is after that process, the EU, for example, mobilized tons of resources, millions of EU money.
Observers. Money.
To improve our law enforcement, our justice, and etc. Now, of course, you've poured in so much money for that, you have to show results.
So what sanctions yan, Chito? I mean, if they poured in a lot of money and we still see it going around, no, right in front of us, no, like in clear summer daylight, no, just like what happened in Kidapawan. Ano yung may sanction from the international community?
Ultimately, it would result in sanctions potentially, but in sort of like in a scale of things. It's bad, but it's not that bad. No, it could be better, but it's not getting there. All of that. So it's sort of like middle of the road. I mean, the Philippines isn't Syria. No. So of course, obviously, the international community is serious about what's happening in Syria, and there are sanctions in Syria, or there were sanctions in Iran. So sanctions in the Philippines because of this is not yet on the table, because they still believe that our governance works. We just need to focus more on these issues
And do something.
So in the case, for example, the Commission on Human Rights, we were a beneficiary of that previous process, because as a result, there have been many international partners that have been helping us as a Commission on Human Rights to become better, more responsive, stronger. But it's still a work in progress.
We have itong si Governor Emily, parang the past like 2 days ago, nung basadyari na I did not order the dispersal.
Is she running? Is she running ngayon?
Ah,
I think she's running for re-election.
Di wala, tapos na siya.
Well, we will know what the people of
Wala pa.
think eventually, no?
Now, knowing what she did, I guess nobody will vote for her. Di ba? Ganun na ganun eh, di ba? Kasi...
Hindi kasama si Chito sa sinasabi mo.
Sa akin lang to, this is not the Chito, no? Pero, you know, the insensitivity, it's not really what she could or could not do.
Yes.
It's the way she said it.
Yes.
Na parang, maaaring sabihin niya, pasensya na kayo kasi wala talaga tayong bigas. But within 5 days, baka usap ko yung NFA, we can use some pork barrel funds to buy maybe 50 kilos of rice. Pwede yan.
Wala nang pork barrel tiki.
Wala na.
Pero meron pong
discretionary.
Meron pong mga
Emergency.
At saka may
programs.
state of calamity, you can
May mga programs.
I am 100% sure that any local government in this country, I'm 100% sure that any local government in this country has a calamity fund.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, so discretionary yan. So let's say nagutom yung mga tao, famine, namamatay na yung mga bata. I am sure that they can buy 10 sacks of rice. Walang
And
problema
I think
yun.
ang masakit kasi dyan is that these are her people.
Yun.
Diba? Whether by legal issue dyan, whether by moral issue dyan, the fact is that the thing is when it is your electorate that is already affected, you're supposed to be protective of them.
O, tanong natin kay...
Hinahanap yan ng mga tao sa iyo
Wait, tanong mo kanina, let's ask the chairman Chito, if let's say, yung tanong ni Attorney June kanina, one of the protesters or a group of them file a case in the CHR against the governor na wala kang ginawa na, not with respect to the dispersal, yung wala kang ginawa kasi gutom kami, yung may pera ka naman dyan, di mo naman binigyan. So, can that be a human rights issue, in your opinion?
We will, of course, ang aming approach as a general rule is to accept all complaints and then take them into account and then ultimately make a decision. We also, as part of our system of operation, we prefer to refer, meaning to say, when people come to us, often we presume they come to us because there's already a level of frustration or desperation, and rather than just say, no, that's not for us, go somewhere else, we receive it and then we do what we can to what we call enable or bridge. So yeah, if there are instances of that, we normally give it due course. However,
hypothetically,
I do have to say that the ombudsman has that constitutional mandate as well. But the ombudsman has to some degree focused on sort of like corruption issues. But if you look at the
that is part of corruption, failure to act.
The constitutional provisions on the ombudsman, it actually has that specified power to direct
but as we know,
other government offices to respond.
The CHR has concurrent jurisdiction in some issues with the ombudsman. So I guess you're an independent body, you're a
In
constitutional
fact,
body.
in other countries, the ombudsman and the Human Rights Commission are
Sabay.
often the same body.
Okay.
But in our case, we have two.
Correct. So with this concurrent jurisdiction that you may have with other agencies, like the ombudsman, the DOJ or whatever, can you, hypothetically, I'm not saying this specific case, let's say any government official, local government official who fails to act upon the request, legitimate requests of his constituents, can these constituents file a case in the Human Rights Commission as a human rights issue, not grafted corruption? Would you think that sounds logical?
We will, as I said, give it due course. Whether or not it's a human rights issue or matter might have to be decided later. What we will probably do is do a referral or a dialogue process. We've done that many times, where
mediation.
That's right. There are certain people that have a demand and they feel that they have not been attended to. We try and bring the relevant agencies together to try and find a solution. So it's also a problem-solving exercise because it's always so easy to sort of like say you're wrong, they're right. But sometimes what we want to do is make things work. And human rights are about everyone anyway. Human rights are about giving dignity and worth to each person and to meet them where they are. That's why sometimes we're perceived to be biased, because our bias is for often the vulnerable,
The victims.
But the purpose really is to sort of like equalize their status in society by making government more responsive, because that's essentially why government is there. If government isn't responsive, then why have a government?
Yeah.
That the purpose of government is to mediate the conflicts in society and to address the needs, the viable, valid claims and needs of the people.
Actually, may sinabi partner si Chito na ano yung magandang concept na usually, when you talk about human rights violations, you talk about the marginalized.
Yes.
Yung bihado,
Yes.
di ba? And we know this in our social justice
Yes.
cases in the Supreme Court, Kalalang versus Williams, etc., that the purpose of this social justice is to equalize all these
Yes.
factors and to make it a level playing field.
Yes.
So, the victim, the rape victim, or the human trafficking victim, of course, is not on the same level as the law enforcement who committed the crime.
Yes.
Diba? So, papantayin mo yan. Diyan sila pumapasok ngayon. So, the Human Rights Commission, as stated by the chairman, is responsible for that, bridging that gap.
Yeah.
Diba? And to make things work, no? Na ganon. So,
And it's not it's a new approach, no, in human rights, no, because you are actually, we have always characterized human rights work as something that is very litigious.
The reality is because of the different aspects of human rights. Meron tayo, for example, civil and political rights.
Yes.
Often, civil political rights are also often referred to as negative rights, meaning to say all the state need do
Yes.
is do nothing. Therefore, the negativity for that right to be fully exercised. So, the freedom of speech,
Yes.
the freedom of assembly,
Yes.
the freedom, the conscience, and all of that.
religion.
Yes, all of that. Those are what you call four negative rights or civil and political rights. For the most part, are of that nature. All that needs to be done is for the state to step back, and it will be fully exercised. But there are so what you do is when those rights are violated, it means that the state did not step back and instead intervene in your freedom of speech or your assembly. Therefore, it becomes in a sense litigious because you then
It's a violation of your
identified someone who have violated it, and that person is a responsible officer. Therefore, you need to charge or hold him accountable.
Privacy is part of that.
That's right.
Privacy.
Now you have another area or realm of human rights, which is called positive rights, or often in the language is economic, social, and cultural rights. These are rights that can only be fully realized
If it's given protection.
if the state steps in and does certain things. For example, the right to education. The right to education will not be fully realized unless the state invests in education, building schools, hiring teachers,
Free school.
textbooks, etc. So that's why we have a mandate in our constitution for free public elementary and secondary education, and we also have a mandate to set up state universities for those who want to proceed to higher education but can't afford it. They can't go to the Ateneo, so they go instead to your university.
Tayo.
Yes.
My university.
Yeah.
UP.
Yes.
Of course, your
Because
father
your
was
The chancellor.
very respected leader of the
Thank you.
university at that time.
Both my parents were professors of UP.
Yes.
My mother was a career professor of the
Yes,
English
my
department.
teacher.
Your professor.
Yes.
Oh.
My teacher in English
So,
too.
yeah, that time when we were there. So,
Yes.
would you know this, ito, ibang tanong, no? But when I graduated, my diploma was actually signed by my father. Pareho kami pangalan eh.
Ayaw, ayaw.
Ernesto Tabuara, and then nakapirma doon, Ernesto Tabuara, din. Dalawa kami.
And that is of course something you will cherish
Of
forever.
course, it's great. And,
So tiki, yun, UP and all of these other state schools are
libre pang UP ngayon, libre.
well, subsidized, no, maliit lang, mayroon pang socialized from
But I
bracket 1 to bracket 9.
I heard of this student who killed himself a few years back because he could not pay 5,000 pesos. And my tutor of my son, who's a third year UP student, undergraduate, is actually paying 18,000 per set. So, and then,
It's socialized kasi have a bracket system.
wala pang libre yan?
Meron libre. Pero, yeah, well, these are very sad situations where people are forced to.
But the bracket is low? Baka masyado mababa naman yung
That's
bracket.
probably something you'll probably need to investigate further, Tiki. After all, you are a distinguished alum of UP. But my point right now is these positive rights require what is called progressive development, meaning positive acts. So, kung may mataas na tuition sa UP, baka isang issue yan ng pag-deny ng right to education. So, or, hindi tayo nagtatayo ng mga public schools sa malalayong lugar. Or, it goes on, right to shelter. right to work, right to food. These are all in the Convention on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights. But they are to be understood in the context of what's called progressive development, because the situation in the Philippines is different, let's say, than the situation in the United States
or Europe.
Or Africa.
So we
No,
cannot.
so-
What you're saying is that we cannot, in our current state, we cannot provide all those rights. The
Uh,
way the
but the
States
state needs to
Make
show
efforts.
that it is
Effort.
progressively moving in that direction. So the norm or the behavior is what's called progressive development.
So what basically you're saying, Chito, is that as far as human rights is concerned, we're not yet at utopia or the promised land. But we have to, or we are mandated to make efforts to at least ensure that we are making steps towards that direction.
In the case of civil and political rights, they're almost immediately actionable and it can be
Because
enforced.
you don't have to do anything.
But in the case of economic, social, and cultural rights, there is a standard of progressive development and you need to take positive steps. Failure to take positive steps or failure to do more when you can. In other words, you're not in deficit, you are in surplus. There's a lot of money going around. There's rice in the warehouses.
Yes.
No? And then rice is denied, then you have a problem of compliance with the right to food.
Well, going back to this Kidapawan incident, freedom of assembly. Your predecessor, Chairman Purificus Nisubing, I know in 2004, upon our request, issued us an opinion or an advisory opinion or a directive. I don't know what it is, but it was on paper which he signed, saying that the freedom of assembly does not require any permit. No? That is directly contrary, of course, to the Supreme Court ruling in Reyes versus Batatsing and the Gordon versus Ruiz case, no? Ruiz versus Gordon, which the permit of requirement of PPA, the abuses and of the Marcos dictatorship, or we just got to watch YouTube.
Actually, dapat gawin talaga natin yan. Because I think we're a lost generation. This generation is a lost generation. Kahit tayo rin naman lost generation na rin tayo.
Marshall of baby.
Yes, because we're martial, not only because we're martial babies, but because we actually do not know so much of what happened in the past. No? I think the Filipinos forget easily because we actually do not know how to remember in the first place.
Well, it's a core problem of any society. But there is a maxim that says those who refuse to learn from the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat them. And with that maxim, every society, for it to become progressive and civilized, must learn from the experiences of their people from history. Okay, there's a historical term for it, a legal term, technical term. It's called time binding. Okay? The term time binding means, are we, the current generation, doomed to continue to do the same mistakes of previous generations? The answer is no, because we should learn from their mistakes. So, for example, Germany in two World Wars, World War I and World War II. The fact that we had World War II was because Germany did not learn from the lessons of World War I. But coming out of World War II, they learned from it.
Okay na.
They learned from it, and because there was a purposive effort at learning from the past.
Or relearning what
That's
they
right.
supposedly knew.
And saying what is wrong and what is right.
The education.
And focusing on the truth about what happened in World War II. In our case,
Marcos too,
as a society also, to build ourselves as a civilization, as a nation, we need to also learn from the past. It appears we're only now beginning to learn about our history against Spanish and American colonial rule. Remember General Luna, the film, and Artikulo Uno,
Bonifacio.
and all these other new films.
General
But there was a
Kidapawan.
question from the generation: why was the Babini sitting down the whole time? Right. So that means there was still not enough information even from that time.
Ignorance.
Yes, even from the basic.
So therefore, it just highlights we need to do more in terms of learning from history. But even greater challenge is about martial law, because the current generation, those younger than us, Tiki June, have not been taught the lessons of martial
Or
law.
exposed.
And exposed to it. And it's not their fault that they don't have a
Because they
memory
were
of
born
it.
later.
Because they don't have a memory, a personal memory of it. But there should be what's called a collective or societal memory of it. So we in the Commission on Human Rights, we see that as an important challenge. And we're actually part of an effort to establish...
Educational?
Yes, educational. We're part of an effort to establish ultimately what we call a martial law museum.
Is it
And,
on?
well, we're right now looking for a site.
I see.
Once we've determined the site, we will have a design, and then we will also begin the preparation of curation of it.
Okay.
So over time, there will be that museum. But even now, people are already putting on YouTube new films.
Yeah.
Etc. There's this Facebook page that everyone should look
We
at.
must
It's called
be
Martial
curators of
Law
that.
Chronicles.
Sa Trinoma, may display, di ba? Nung
That's right.
Trinoma, the last February, I brought my son there. My son is 13 years old.
That's right.
So I brought him to
all
the
of these
pictures.
efforts need
Yeah.
to be done, and we sort of like the older generation of right now. We have an obligation.
Hindi ako yun.
Yeah.
You have an obligation to your son. I have an obligation to my daughter to tell them the truth about what happened. That's why the statement you mentioned is important. It's coming out of Tuesdays because it's about a statement about the truth. Because we cannot accept sort of like a invention,
Rewriting
reinterpretation
of history.
and rewriting of history that is false.
So, never again.
Oo.
Never again.
Importante talaga that if we want to progress as a nation is that we learn from history.
Good. So, well, we're out of time.
Unfortunately,
We're out of time.
it's
Yeah.
not. Yes.
So, Barer, baka meron kang
Yeah.
meron kang final statement?
Malapit na election kaya doon ako. And because we talked about human rights now, I think we ought to think about whom to vote. Also in terms of their human rights position, their human rights record. Hindi lang naman yan sa national, kundi sa kundi sa lupa, no? Kailangan tingnan, i-assess din natin yung mga binoboto natin in terms of their proclivity, no, to promoting and protecting
Respecting human rights.
rights.
Yeah, I
Respecting
agree.
human rights.
This upcoming election is very
Yes.
crucial. No? So, vote wisely. Keep human rights in mind. These are equally important as all other rights.
Yes.
Economic, social, political. Human rights is
Kasi
important.
kahit anong meron ka, basta binaviolate mo yung human rights, then you're actually reflecting, projecting the spirit of your
And it goes,
society.
human rights goes to the dignity of the person.
Yes.
So it attaches to every human being regardless of wealth, position, education, or whatever your nationality. Okay? So with that, we have to go. Thank you again, Chairman Chito Gascon of the Commission on Human Rights for being with us.
Thank you po.
Malaking salamat. This has been another episode of Equal Justice. Thank you.
Salamat.
Thank you. Good.